Hi, welcome back to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lulu. On this week's episode, lead scientist at Wizard Scientists and Biocharged, Ian Mitchell discusses how ozone therapy can be used to regenerate the DNA, boost brain function, improve detoxification, and much, much more. Over the past decade, Ian has developed a series of novel therapeutics using lipofullerenic conjugates and holds multiple patents across a host of different scientific disciplines, such as nanomedicine and materials science, and additionally holds joint patents with the University of Tulsa for viral inhibitors, cancer screening technology, and personalized cell culture media for both laboratory and clinical settings. Ian recently developed the first viable gamma ray shielding system for use on spacecraft and space habitats, and a carbon negative concrete to inhibit greenhouse proliferation. Ian is the lead scientist at Wizard Sciences and Biocharge, resident biochemist at Transcriptions, and the polymath in residence at Austin, Texas based Ecliptic Capital. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm so excited to have my guest today, Ian Mitchell. We're going to be talking all about how ozone regenerates the body and all different types of things. So I can't wait. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Lulu. Happy to be here.
Yay, I'm so excited. So before we dive deep into the body and the cells, I'd love for you to just give us a little background about you, what you're doing, your impact on the planet, what really makes you tick.
Let's see, technically, what I usually get blanketed with is the moniker I get all the time is wizard, which is funny to me, but I think that's because I work on the fringe of science. I'm a research scientist. I've done all sorts of stuff, taught biochemistry at university, and I have my own companies and we develop lots of different products. I work in physics, quantum physics. I worked with high performance athletes. I worked with NASA. I've done all sorts of stuff. Really, the other term that's really probably most applicable is polymath, which is, I think, kind of high level tinkerer. It's what that really means. Somebody who has attention deficit disorder but happens to be reasonably bright. So
I love it.
I spend a lot of my squirrel, and when I find something really intriguing, I just run it down.
Nice.
So I've worked on ozone quite a bit, nanoparticulates, specifically carbon-60, nanomedicine, electromedicine, developing pharmaceuticals, whole host of things, oncologic things. Working in oncology, I developed anticoagulants and all sorts of things, basically subcellular mechanisms to bypass the way that cancers work, anti-angiogenic therapies, a whole host of stuff. Just all sorts of things trying to figure out subtle mechanisms to make human physiology function a little more effectively, which it obviously does perfectly well in and of itself. But we're kind of in an environment where we're lambasted with glyphosate and EMFs and all sorts of stuff all the time. So it actually it puts a little bit of a damper on our ability to perform. So with all of the things that I do, I try and just compensate a little bit for that.
That's great. You're like a geek, true to my heart. It's like the science and the diving deep into the world of the unknown, because we're just tapping, I feel tapping into what we're just like, there's so many ways that we're able to help the body. We're just really on the surface, I think, of tapping into science in a different way.
I always used to tell my students that science is a point on a line. And the best science that we have right now, if we survive 10,000 years from now, people will look back at what we're doing and go, because it will seem laughable in simplicity. And that's the thing is, we're doing the best we can. So part of the reason I like to work on the outer edge of things and push the bounds a bit is because I don't have a problem with failure, because I screw things up and fail all the time, more frequently than anybody else in my lab. But that's because I really don't mind, because that's how you push the bounds and you learn. If I try 100 experiments and 99 of them fail, and at some point I'll hit one that works, great. That's a huge success, because then I know to pull that thread in that direction. And you have to, in my opinion, you have to be somewhat agnostic about it, because you can't really be biased for the outcome, because that's not real science. Real science means you're almost certainly going to end up in an area where you do not technologically have the capacity to understand what it is you found. And so then you devote time and effort trying to shoot around the topic, which is, a lot of what I've been lecturing about recently and traveling and talking and working with companies on is quantum biology. And that's really amazing to me, because I can see the effects of it. And I've done experiments at the university to actually demonstrably show what is different with our current technology. If I'll run something analytically on a spectral analysis with a gas chromatograph, right, I'll get the same compound, but then if I look at the same compound from the same batch, and one is, say, quantumly charged and one is not, then the redox potential is entirely different. Even though we don't quantitatively know what's going on, I can tell you with one test, there's a huge difference, even though with the other, it's not. And I always say it's like assessing boxes, right? Technologically, where we're at is we say, oh, this is a blue box, this is a blue box, they're exactly the same. This one can be filled with lead, this one can be filled with feathers, but we don't quite have the technology to discern those yet. So that's where I've been focusing a lot, is trying to suss out the mechanisms that separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, of what is and is not making a large difference in things that cascade up from the quantum level to the subatomic level to the atomic to the molecular to the chemical to the biochemical to the physiologic, and just following that path up to see. And again, 10,000 years from now, I'm sure all this stuff will be stupidly codified and everybody will be like, doy. That's just how it is. Right now, it's still very strange and new and different. And because of that, for me, at least.
Exactly. And I really like what you said about studying science from the unbiased perspective, because when we open our mind to any possibility, that's when we're in the quantum zone. We're in that quantum flow. We're really allowing any knowledge to come through instead of being like, I want this outcome. So you can't do that with science anymore. It has to be like, I don't think ever, but I know it has been in the past, but we have to move to a new place of technology and science where no outcomes. So we can see things from a different perspective, like with new glasses on.
Yeah, it hasn't really changed a whole lot in the past couple hundred years. Though the pure sciences, we all kind of march forward as best we can. But generally speaking, it takes about a generation to change. And if you're a really good scientist, chances are you're going to really piss off a lot of people. I mean, there's a long and storied history of the Galileo Galileis of the world who end up locked up somewhere because they said the wrong thing about the wrong fact. And it turns out we aren't the center of the universe.
The world is flat.
Yeah. Yeah, and nowadays, and luckily we're not sequestered in a tower or threatened with our own existence. We do have our grant funding pulled and things like that. And it's actually, you'd be amazed at how many times I've seen really brilliant research die just because people say or do the wrong thing, and their grant funding goes away. That's just the way the system is structured. So you have to work within that. It's part of the reason I have my company structured the way they are, and I do research for other groups the way I do, is because working for private institutions, it's a lot easier to garner funding than it is to go out and do things publicly and try and for federal grants. Case in point, I was working with a university, and we developed a new cancer therapeutic, and the animal data was great. The rodent models were fantastic. We had rats with tumors, same rats, no tumors, and we submitted it for a grant. And the grant reviewer wrote back and said, no, we're going to deny the grant because it just doesn't make sense. And admittedly, I understand that it may not make sense, but if you have an animal that does have a tumor, and then you have the same animal sans tumor, it might not make sense, but that's the point of what we're supposed to be doing as a species, is trying to figure out the stuff that we don't know.
Exactly.
No, not just kind of not throwing money at the things that we do know. Let's give them more poison drugs. Woo! That's a great approach.
Yes, let's try this old cancer drug and see how it affects it. Yes, I think that we're seeing a lot more shifts. I think we'll continue. Like you said, the example of you taking that generation, I think now that doorway of that generation is being much more narrow because our planet is speeding up. So it's that what took a generation can now happen quickly if we have the energy behind it. I think we'll see more scientific changes happen more quickly. Hopefully.
I think so. I really do. I think the rate of communication, they always used to say that knowledge increased exponentially. And I think that's actually a bit of a misnomer, because if you looked at the rate that the population expanded, knowledge expanded at the same rate. So if it were truly exponential, then it would have been another factor. It would have been more cubic. But now it actually is expanding, but it's because of the rate of interaction, because we're all so connected. You're sitting across the country, we're having a conversation. When I get off the phone, I was just talking to someone in Germany a few minutes ago. It's one of those things, like now we really do have kind of the cultural calculus where it's a rate of change of a rate of change. And because of that, if we do it the right way, I think as a species, we've got so much potential, and I'm holding out hope for humanity. So
Yes, me too. I have strong hope for our humanity. Yes, I think we can do this. So let's talk about ozone, because I think that's a super fun topic that I think a lot of people don't understand what it is. I think maybe it's something in the environment, but we're talking about a different type of ozone here. And I'd love for you to talk about what it is, its chemical makeup, so to speak, from that lovely scientific geeky brain of yours.
So basically, what's happening is you've got normally the oxygen that we breathe is O2,
Right.
and ozone is nature's disinfectant effectively. And that's why after a light, it's created at high voltage static discharge. So lightning strikes create ozone. That's why you have that kind of sweet, acrid smell after a rainstorm. What you're actually smelling is ozone. So what happens is as the lightning rips through the air, it actually cracks the O2 apart, and you have singlet oxygen floating around, and then it will bind to another O2. And so you end up with O3. And ozone is, chemically speaking, O3. And because of that, it wants to balance itself out and strip away electrons and bind to something else. So that's why it's such a good cleaning mechanism in nature, is because it cleans at a subatomic level. And pretty much if there's something out there, pathogenically speaking, if you strip away electrons, you can just eviscerate it and break its membranes and pull it apart. And not at some surface level, say the level of proteins or something like that. You're actually going subatomically and eviscerating it, breaking it apart, cracking it, and or denaturing it, depending on what you're approaching. And that's why it's so amazingly good. It's because you can't stop things from breaking down at a subatomic level. So it's not something, there are ozone action days, because in the environment, if the concentration of ozone goes up too much, it's a radical species. So it starts to disrupt things. Now, it's really bad if you breathe it, because your membranes in your nose and your lungs can't handle it. However, if you do it rectally, vaginally, in some sort of insufflation like that, it's phenomenally good for you. The other option is autohemotherapy, where you draw your blood and then you mix it with ozone. And everybody thinks that, I've heard people say this, that you're pumping ozone back in your body. That's actually not the case. The ozone it's the third most reactive molecular species. So there's about 100 million molecular interactions every second. So from the time you inject the ozone into the bag of blood, it turns this kind of cherry bomb red, and it looks beautiful. And that's because it's oxygenating your blood. Now, the ozone has gone in, it's hit some of the lipids, and then it forms these things called ozonides, which are signaling molecules in your body. So when you reintroduce the blood via autohemotherapy, you're getting hyperoxygenated blood and ozonides, which go through and cascade and stimulate your body. Primarily, they'll hit your mitochondria and upregulate energy production. And your body actually thinks that it's under assault. It thinks that there's some sort of oxidative insult, a pro-oxidative insult. So it marshals all of its forces and upregulates superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and all of your antioxidant protections, which is phenomenal for you, because really there's not that much of an insult left, but your body marshals its will and charges forward and balances everything and energizes it so that you can be ready for this onslaught. There's just no real onslaught. The other way you can take it, and this is one of the things that we had built a company around, myself and some partners, was to take it as an oil. This is actually from Nikola Tesla back in 1904, had started the Tesla ozonated oil company. And Tesla was one of the few guys I really think was legitimately bright in the past century. He was a smart guy. And so when I went back and looked at how people were doing ozonated oil for ingestion now and how Tesla did it, it was vastly different. So the process for the past 100 years literally has been you basically mix ozone into oil via Venturi, or you bubble it through the oil until it stabilizes via redox reactions. And then you skim it off, and then you can ingest it. And that takes, generally speaking, about 2.5 weeks. Tesla's process took 8 weeks, give or take. And he had these really long, high strength magnetic beds. And then he would fill them with oil and slowly bubble ozone through them. And the viscosity would change. As the viscosity shifted, they became more like a gel. But nobody really knew what he was doing. They thought it was one of those wackadoo Tesla things just because he liked electricity. But when I looked at it, I thought, holy cow, this guy's brilliant. He realized that they're polar molecules, meaning that they have a magnetic orientation because of the unstable electron configuration for that third oxygen kicked off. So he actually got them to line up single file, but kept them from reacting as they turned into a gel and the viscosity shifted, so that they would have the highest per unit strength that he could get. And so when I started looking at trying to figure out how to mitigate people's immune systems using ozone, I thought, God, that's brilliant. So I copied that at first. And then I thought, this is cool, but I've got 100 years of tech that Tesla didn't actually have access to. I'm sure he thought about it, and I'm sure that was probably frustrating for him, but he probably envisioned it, but the world hadn't really caught up yet. So I thought, okay, what would he do if he were alive now? So I started working with taking it a step further, not just orienting the actual molecules, but actually seeing if I could get the spin configuration of the molecules coherent. And the reason for that is one of the tenets that I play with a lot is if you look at coherence and resonance, you can end up with things that are harmonically additive or destructive, right? Something is additive, you end up with a larger signal. If it's destructive, you end up with a smaller signal. Using that kind of premise, I thought, I wonder if I can take this molecule without having to use more of it, if I can basically turn up the volume of the molecule instead of actually making more of the molecule. So I came up with a process using plasma confinement fields and plasma drivers to basically get everything oscillating in the right way. And I always reference lasers, right? A laser is a coherent form of light. You can have a light bulb and have the same number of emissive photons that you do from a certain laser burst, right? It will warm a hot dog, one will punch a hole through steel. The difference is resonance and coherence. The laser, everything is moving in phase coherently in the same direction at the same rate. And when you have that, you end up with a tremendous degree of power. So what I did is I took the molecules and I got them all entrained moving in the same direction at the same time. And then I tested that, and sure enough, it did have more output. But the problem was it would lose it after just an hour or so. It was really quick. It would dissipate and things would go back into a state of disorder. So I was thinking about ways that I could try and keep that. And so I thought, what actually locks things into a confined state? And then I thought holograms are basically a photonic scale reproduction of something, right? And most people don't know this, but you've looked at a little holographic plate where the image is kept inside in 3D. What's interesting about that to me is that if you shatter that glass plate and you take any piece of it, the entire information to reproduce that whole image is in every piece down to a molecule.
I
You
love
have a
that.
single piece of silicon dioxide, one molecule, and you fire a laser through it, it will recreate that entire image. And the image, if you use a coherent light source like a laser, is actually accurate down to photon scale resolution. So it actually captures where that thing was in space, in time, where the electrons were, like everything is locked in position. So my thinking was my laser pulses really rapidly, and I've got this gel, and I want to keep the gel in a specific state. So basically what I did is I used the gel that I made, the ozonated oil gel, as a holographic storage medium. So I rigged it up and I would get it oscillating in the plasma confinement field to a certain state. And then I used dichroic beam splitters and fired lasers through it to lock in the spin states, which is, it's a little strange, but when you actually test it, and you can feel it, right? If you take 300 milligrams of a normal ozonated oil and you ingest it, it's not that much. If you take one of my little capsules and you ingest it, you actually start to get a flushing sensation because your mitochondria really respond because they think there's a huge insult going on. I kind of say it's like Blitzkrieg, the lightning warfare, right of the Valkyries, planes come in. But there's really not, biologically speaking, there's not that much media there, but it's a very loud signal. So it's the air horn equivalent where it just goes off and your body responds, which is great because you don't actually have a lot of things creating an impediment via pro-oxidative insults, but you have this huge reaction from your body. So that upregulates all of your immune function. And so that was the process that I used to get ozone in a capacity where it could be more easily taken, because autohemotherapy is great and it's actually stronger, but it costs a couple $100. You've got to go to a doctor to do it. And not everybody likes needles. So the trade-off is if I've got something, for sake of argument, that's maybe half as good, but you can pop it in a capsule every morning, I felt like that was going to provide a lot more benefit to people than the Cadillac version where you actually go in and you extract your blood and you do all that. It's a phenomenal procedure. And there's another one called 10-pass ozone therapy, which is even better, where it does it in multiple cycles. And that's an even better procedure. But again, very costly. Not everybody's going to have access to it. And if you're trying to effectively heal the masses and do things at a large scale where you can make an impact, sometimes you have to realistically, what is going to help the most people? Is it doing the fancy, super fancy French restaurant, or is it coming up with a healthy version of McDonald's? realistically, the healthier version of that's attainable that people can do, in my assessment, was more impactful. So that's what I did.
That's great. And then you mentioned the plasma energy piece. So can you talk a little bit about what's the plasma energy? Where are you obtaining that plasma energy from? And how is it affecting the specific ozone particle?
So I take confined noble gases and arc high frequency, high voltage discharges through them to create a
Mm-hmm.
plasma field and
Mm.
oscillating.
Okay. So like
And then
an
I have
infinity or a circle going through the field, a
in this
tube.
case, it's a tube, an arc tube connected with wiring. And then I have a driver that oscillates high frequency, high voltage discharge through that. And then I have a large, in the shape that actually worked best, because I put the oil in the center of the thing in a big sphere. The shape that actually worked best was pyramidal. So I've got what looks like a giant steel pyramid that encloses and encases all this stuff, so that when the plasma discharge starts oscillating, everything focuses and the foci is dead in the middle at the center of all of the oil. And so
Mm.
it's there's a lot of geometry. You can't, again, we've talked about this offline. A lot of it sometimes seems, but the reality is focal points are focal points, geometry is geometry. And it would be silly to go, God, this looks really weird. Probably shouldn't do that. I don't care. Whatever is the most effective, and that just happened to be the most effective. It's also interesting too, because there should actually be no contact between the arcing plasma and the confinement field. You touch that steel pyramid, it feels, you're not actually being shocked, but it feels as if you're being massively shocked. It's just
Interesting.
kind of just because of the high frequency resonance that's coming off of it. And I'm not going to prefer about anything. I won't say that I know exactly what it is, because I don't, but it's intriguing to me. And if I had more time, I would probably try and stop and figure out, why is this doing this thing?
Yeah,
Because
why
it's
is this
very neat.
happening? Yeah, I
Yeah.
love plasma energy. It's so fascinating for me. That's why I was asking deeper. I was recently at the retreat center, and they had lots of different biohacking devices that we could use and try out. And one we did where it was using these big glass tubes, and then the plasma energy would circulate basically through the air around the bed that we would lie on, basically, and changing our photon field, changing our energetic field. So I love that you can use that particular piece to then charge the ozone, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's if you can come up with a way to actually make it persistent, so that once you stop the input of the energy, it actually still maintains that modified flow, then you're fine. And there are
Right.
a lot of people doing that. Ula Quantum, I work with them and I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
their scientific development things in the lab. They're really heavy on the research side and have done double blind clinical trials. And I've done research with a lot of the spectroscopic gear at the university that I do work at. And I know they've at a couple of institutes, the Base Institute in Austria has done a ton of work with them, and they do dark field microscopy, so we can actually image the blood and see what's going
Right.
on in real time. And those things it's amazingly important, because you start to figure out, like, wow, this is actually making a big difference. But it is. That's all taking things that are subtle, like plasma, and using that to modulate human physiology. Which is fantastic, in my
I
opinion.
know. So we can actually go in and start working on the cells. That's when really things start to manifest in our health in this completely
Well,
different way.
that's their communication system, right? The cells communicate electromagnetically. They
Mm-hmm.
communicate they communicate with little femtosecond, mitochondria do at least. They communicate with little femtosecond pulses of light. It stands to reason that if you want to actually engage with something, you have to understand how it communicates and how it processes signal input and output. Yeah, it's very cool to me.
I know, me too, totally. Can you use ozone therapy, or have you seen it used in studies for using it for cancer treatment, or really going like deep into cellular disease states?
Yeah, well, sure. There's a whole host of research where people use it. Primarily, it's used for things that are a little more macroscopic, meaning just
Okay.
dealing with larger things that are, say, living. Because if somebody has SIBO or something like that, it's relatively easy to get them to ingest something, and then the ozone goes in and will actually strip away things and destroy it. Cancer is a little bit of a trick. You can do some work on cancer with ozone, but it's not the modality that I think is actually the most effective. Personally, all of the things that I really like, way back when in 2008, I think, or 2009,
So
I was
long
working on
ago.
this yeah, I know, it does seem like a long time, but I was working on this anti-angiogenic therapy, which is just basically as I had said earlier, it was one of the things like if you figure out different methods to try and block or bypass something, right? Can I
Right.
get the blood to move this way? Can I get the blood to stop? Can I get the blood to flow? In this case, it was can I completely anti-angiogenesis just means you're trying to keep it from starting new blood flow.
Yeah.
And so that anti-angiogenic, basically, I always felt like there was a problem with it because I was trying to get cancer to not do what cancer does. It wants to vascularize, it wants to find a new food source, it wants to create a system so that it can bring in blood and provide itself nutrients. Ultimately, I did realize that this is probably in the right way to do this. So I came up with a different approach using carbon 60 and like taking a lipolysed form of carbon 60. And carbon 60 is just 60 carbon atoms clustered together. In the technical term is a truncated icosahedron, but it's also known as a soccer ball. So
Soccer ball, the technical term.
yeah, technically speaking, it's a soccer ball. So you take these little nano soccer balls, and normally they're hydrophobic, so you can't get them into your cells. But if you bind them to a lipid or lipophilic, then you get them to permeate into the cells and they start to modulate cellular biology. And cancer is interesting in that it only exists within a very narrow bandwidth energetically, right? If your body has too much energy, the cancer can't propagate. If it has too little energy, the cells will die. And it's also really kind of compelling because it co-opts your immune system to signal and spread. So it uses cytokines IL-6 and IL-8, right?
Yep.
So it co-opts your cytokines and uses specifically those two to find distal points of metastases and actually use your own immune system against you and say, hey, where can we spread? And then it pushes out and you look for distal points of metastasis. Yeah. And so if you can inhibit those different functions, then you can radically reduce the proliferation and the spread of cancer, which was ultimately what I arrived at in, I think, 2014 or 2015, was to basically shunt metastasis by virtue of modulating the energetics and then negating the cytokines. And if you do that, you can just shut down metastatic spread.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes total sense.
Yeah, so I'm more of a fan, not so much of the ozone for the oncology vein of things as I am for using carbon 60. And there are a whole host of other things. There's actually a lot of electromedicine therapies that I think are really pretty solid for that. Again, because it's just multiple wave oscillators, and there's some other stuff that I think is really good. Actually, one of the best things I have seen in a long time was a therapy developed by a guy in Texas. Actually, it was researched at MD Anderson with John Kansas was the guy's name. And he was a radio engineer. And they came up with a method to shake nanoparticles. They were using gold and silver nanoparticles that they would embed in tumors. And then they would just oscillate them. And the thermally emissive properties would heat up the nanoparticles and it would actually break down the cell walls in the tumors. That I thought was brilliant. And it seemed to be very promising, but it was unfortunately defunded and shut down. So
yes, I've seen that happen. Yeah, and I think vibration therapy in general, I think we're going to see a lot more surgence of it because we can see for our body is energy. When we move the body, that energy shifts the vibration of blockages, whether getting things flowing. And I think so many people in our current state have a lot of blockages in their energy and movement. Like we're sitting right now on this Zoom call, right? Yeah, just we're not moving enough. And so I think that vibration is so important.
I'm actually in a pool of water up to my waist, just treading with my feet.
Me too. Me too.
I'm stable. So like a standing desk, except it's a waiting desk. So same difference. Yeah. Actually, on the note of the energetics, what's that?
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on the note of the energetics, it's funny how for thousands of years, Chinese medicine would say, oh, you have all these meridians and this energy flowing through, and everybody in the West, we'd all just blow it off. And as soon as we have devices and mechanisms and equipment that can actually image it, we go, amazing, look what we found. There are these subtle energy flows in the body.
Right. That have been found for thousands of years. Yes. We're so brilliant. Yeah. I think that we're seeing that like the old traditional medicine resurfacing, like, yes, it is actual medicine that works. There's a reason behind that. It's true. We have energy bodies. And when you were talking about the nanoparticles earlier, what different forms can you use? I don't know if you know this, you probably do. So can you take any herbal medicine and then put it with a lipid form and make
make it a nanoparticle. What is the nanoparticle aspect of it?
So there are a lot of people who do nanoliposomal formations of things.
Right.
And yes, to that end, you can't do it with everything. There's some things that just won't. But you can actually take compounds, whether you're trying to bind something that's water soluble and bind it to a lipid, or fat soluble and bind it to an aqueous solution. You use amphipathic compounds, and you basically liposomally bind one thing to the other with an intermediate.
Okay,
and
that
so
makes
you
sense.
use some sort of agent where you can generally emulsify things together, and you use a midterm binder like a lecithin or something like that. And that's actually one of the really common ones. If you want to make liposomal things, you wrap it in lecithin because it can bind on one side to an aqueous solution, on the other side to a lipid. Depends on which you solubilize first, and then you can bind it. After you've done that, you end up with these large molecular clusters. And if you want to make something that's really easily digestible or permeable, then there are two ways. You can use a microfluidizer homogenizer, which is like a high pressure dispersion system that basically, if you imagine the liquid moving through and then being broken into many parts because of the impact of the pressure shooting it out on something, that's one method. Another is to use a sonicator, which is just basically a high frequency ultrasound. And as the liquid moves past, typically you'll have a titanium tip, and it will vibrate at a very high rate with a lot of pressure. And then as the molecules move beneath it, it actually cracks them and separates them. And so you end up with a nanoliposomal dispersion that's very small, say under 100 nanometers. And they're far more readily absorbed in your body and taken through your GI tract.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do it with almost everything. It's in fact, there's a company that I can think of, at least one, where their entire vitamin line, what they're really doing is basically just taking things and making it smaller.
Right.
And that it does actually have an impact because your body can't buffer it. A lot of the things that I've been able to do with some of the Wizard Sciences serums, the reason they work is because I am able to buffer the breakdown of proteins and things, and I can get them through the GI tract all the way into the small intestine without having them totally destroyed by stomach acid, just because of the way I bound them in a lipid oxidant buffer. Yeah, so size does in fact matter here. You really
Size
want
matters.
size matters. Sorry,
Yes.
the science is in, so it matters.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important piece because, liposomal, I love using liposomal specific medicines with patients. And it's always fascinating to me, like, okay, I use a lot of tinctures too. What's the format? How does it get there? Can anything be made from it or into it? So thank you for talking about that. Because I think it's important also for patients and listeners to understand, what does it even mean? How does our body then absorb it better when it is in that liposomal form and that nanoparticle is the same thing as liposomal, but the liposomal is the actual medium, correct?
Yeah, so the liposomal, just to be a liposome, means that you've wrapped something. So it's a lipid wrapped membrane, and you've created a little micellular structure, which is just like a little spheroid. And then in the nano part, just specifically refers to billionth. So it's
tiny.
It's just a measurement of size. Yeah.
Right.
Teensy tiny. Yeah,
right.
that's it.
Like the Incredible Shrinking. What was that movie? He has the shrink ray and he makes it super, super tiny. I love that movie. It's so great. So good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
yeah. And so we were talking too about the mitochondria, and I'd love for us to go back on that a minute, because I think it's so important. So many people are looking for ways to increase their energy, create more energy. And so one aspect I'd love for you to address is, so what is that epigenetic piece that we're seeing so many different stress factors around us impacting our cells? How is we seeing that degenerating the cells, and how can we use ozone therapy and or other, like the carbon-60 different therapies, to really go in and help with the mitochondria and help turn on the genes, turn off the genes, really help that activation of DNA?
I think on that front, the therapy with regard specifically to epigenetics that I think is the most impactful is the carbon-60 is really beneficial because it upregulates the ATP, right? And it does it through a peculiar mechanism. Because it's nanoscopic, it's only 1.1 nanometers wide. When you bind it to the lipid, it moves into your body, moves through the cells. The cell separates the nanosphere from the lipid, stays on the surface of the membranes. The nanosphere delocalizes, moves through the cytoplasm, and actually binds into the membrane of the mitochondria. Now, your mitochondria, everybody says the powerhouse of the cell, right? So basically, its purpose is to pump out ATP. And it does that. It's shaped like a little jelly bean and squiggles.
Bling, bling, bling.
Yeah. And it's actually, interestingly, it's piezoelectric. So actually, the motion creates energy, and it has to move in order to do that. So when you line the surface of it with the nanoparticles, what happens is oxidative stressors that come in, it's the reactive oxygen species that come in, are negated on the surface. So you're not actually using the carbon 60 to create more ATP, but what you are doing is you're blunting the detriment from the reactive oxygen species. So the net effect is a huge jump in output. So when we tested it, it was years and years ago, I tested it at the university, and what we came up with was the low end, we were getting an 18.3% boost. High end, it was 58.3. So if you can get something, it was a really profound jump. 58.3% boost is huge. Now, and that was just buffering. So all you're doing there is blocking system loss. So with my Wizard Sciences stuff, there's one serum called the Olympic serum, and I made it for Olympic athletes. These guys that were doing the Olympic trials for pole vaulting, or lovingly, as I termed it, reverse limbo. So these guys were trying to do like these big jumps, and they were going, because elite athletes are always going for 1% to 2% gains because they're at the top end of physicality. And I thought, well, that seems silly. I know that I can really modulate biology here. And because if you modulate it at the cellular level, when it cascades up, you can get these huge effects that are really outsized. So I started at the very basis, and I put all these different compounds in, like PQQ, pyrroloquinone, resveratrol, nicotinamide mononucleotide, CoQ10. I did all the kind of things to modulate different parts of the electron transport chain so I could get this huge output. And these guys started getting 13 to 17% boost in output.
That's huge for a jumper.
Yeah, it was huge, actually. And the funny part, for me at least, was they would always measure their grip strength. Like 150, 160 pound grip strength was pretty epic for those guys. And they would consistently do it because they're Olympic level athletes. And after they started the protocol working with me, they were hitting 200 pounds plus. And they eventually, one of them broke the grip strength machine because he just went well. It was great because they sent me a picture of it. It said Wizard Rock at work or something like that, because it had actually shattered the grip strength machine because it had gone so far over 200 pounds. Wow. They have to have, when they rotate up, they have to have a tremendous amount of strength and then be able to release. But that's what happens. Instead of just a 58.3 kind of threshold at the top end, you end up with a lot more, because just the C60 lipolyzed will block the loss. But when you add things in like NMN and CoQ10 and PQ, and you're actually trying to upregulate the number of mitochondria biogenesis that gets stimulated with PQQ, you're trying to upregulate the output of NAD, and you do that with the precursors like NR, NMN, stuff like that. And when you collectively stack those things, you get these huge outputs, and people get superhero mode, which is great. People function far more effectively when they're in that. And not everybody's going to be running outside and trying to leap over their car. But if you suddenly have the capacity to provide your energetics a lot more, then it does that. And how that ties in to the epigenetic component is you get the protein switching based on your environment primarily. And the way to block the loss and have some sort of negative epigenetic switching occur is to provide yourself with enough inherent energy that it doesn't downregulate. I've worked with one person here in my lab that has alpha-1 antitrypsin syndrome, and which is just a protein misfolding syndrome that occurs. And typically later in life, depending on which specific allele you have, whether it's the M or the Z or what the severity of that is, you'll end up having to have a liver transplant or a lung transplant, because simply the proteins don't fold properly, and the degradation over decades leads you in a position where you're completely compromised. Oddly enough, if you upregulate all of the energetics, hey, that doesn't happen. And your body, when it has proper energetics, it still maintains the ability to fold those proteins properly. You can actually see the incline of the ability of your body to fold those proteins properly, as opposed to the decline, where all of that stuff, when your body loses the energetics, that's exactly what happens. So those protein switches go off, and epigenetically you start coding for having something fail. And a lot of my work has been, initially the past decade, was look at human longevity and what I needed to do to modulate biology so that I can increase human longevity. And I think I actually still hold the record for longest lived mammal. I got a 93% extension in the lifespan of all of my lab animals.
Wow.
And Yeah, if you correlated that with human extinction, and this was quite a while back, I could do much better now, but it would have correlated to roughly a lifespan of 152, which was pretty pronounced.
Yeah, yeah. You have to decide whether you want to live that long. Okay, do I want to be 152? It depends.
Well, nobody wants to be 152 if you look at somebody right now who's 80 and go, huh.
Right. But if you have a healthy body with activated
Right.
DNA and activated mitochondria, that's a whole different ballgame, right?
It is. And so what was peculiar is when I looked at the mice, and they were P53 knockout mice. So we had extracted the P53, which is your tumor suppressor gene. So you take out the P53 gene, you grow the mice. In this case, they were homozygous, so negative. And so they had a very short but very well-defined lifespan, because those are the mice used in oncology. They're the unfortunate tumor mice that develop idiopathic tumors, which is the fancy way of saying spontaneous tumor genesis.
Yeah.
So you just have these things cropping up all over the place. And it didn't happen. So that didn't happen with these mice. So
Interesting.
the serum that I had on, yeah, it actually was. It was very bizarre. So the first thing I noticed was, they're not dying. They should have died by now. And then the
You're
second
like,
was,
that's a good sign.
yeah. Well, it was, save the fact that I had actually built part of my back of my house as a vivarium, because I figured it would be a short stint. And then fast forward a year later, when most of the mice are still there, it was not the best option ever.
In the back of your house, you had them?
Yeah, I had a 1,500-foot space that I cordoned off to turn into a vivarium for them. So I did that. And that way I could, because my thought was, it's a little bit of a dicey experiment. I want to be able to watch these guys every day and really see it. And I did. But it was bizarre. And it was just, you don't expect them, one, to live nearly that long. And because in oncology, you use so many knockout mice that they have very really precisely defined mortality curves. So if it's a wild type, this long, if it's heterozygous, this long, homozygous, this long. And I went with homozygous because it was literally the shortest mammalian lifespan I could come up with that had very definable curves. And so I knew the parameters. And then when I blew past that, I thought, God, this is really bizarre. And then when I did the first necropsy on the first mouse that died, it was very obvious that it had died of a femoral hemorrhage. It hadn't died of tumors, which I thought, that's strange. I must have missed it. So I sent the subsequent mice, as they would die, I sent them off to a veterinary pathologist to do full pathology and histology. And same thing, didn't see tumors. They weren't dying of tumors. And the other bizarre part was, I felt bad, but I feel good about this. Their lifespan, basically, it was like it locked them in at middle age. And they were really healthy until the last 2 to 3% of their lifespan. And then they just fell apart, like hardcore fell apart. But again, if you said, okay, Ian, you can live to be 148, and you're going to be super fit, and you're going to just be exactly like you are now, you're going to have a grand old time. But from 148 to 152 is really going to suck. I would probably go, okay.
Yeah, most people, yeah. And by that time, you're like, can you just cryo freeze me? And then I'll be fine in the last 2 years or something. Live in a bubble.
Yeah. And at that point, that's a Ray Kurzweil approach, is live long enough to live forever kind of thing. I don't personally want to live forever, because I don't really think it's like the right thing. But by the same token, if you can figure out where you can push the bounds to, because I really do, I'm up on health span. I would really like people to live a much longer time in really good health. Whether they make it 200 or 400 or 100 years, I'm not really concerned. But it would be really nice, and I would feel much better if I were able to contribute so that they made it to that point in a healthy fashion, and they were enjoying life and felt zestful and happy. Think about how much better the world would be if everybody who were tooling around at 80 or 90 years old were just invigorated and happy and energetic, and not some feeble, doddering old person who society had effectively thrown away. It would entirely change the landscape of our culture and our civilization as a whole.
And I think that's very possible and on the wave of the future. I think the people have to break the mindset and the old code of, once you're quote unquote middle age, everything goes downhill. I'm like, well, who decided that? Like, I don't believe in that anymore. And I'm ready to break that wide open and bust it up, because that's like, we want to be healthy and live the best life forward and not be declining as we move up. We want to be enjoying every moment.
It's tricky, actually. When I started looking at it, I realized that there were very definitive points that nature in its infinite brilliance tries to clear out the older part of the populace so that it can allocate the resources to the younger part of the
Right.
populace.
It's true.
In terms of like looking at the species overall, that makes much more sense. Get rid of the ones that are broken, replace them with the new model. And so one of the things I noted was that if you really wanted to negate that cycle, you had to be performing at a high level physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally. Like you have to have a good network of friends. That's pivotal, right? You have to have good physicality. Your sex life has to be good. Like all of these things have to work forward, because if those things aren't working in concert, you're pretty much hosed, right? You can fire on 5 of 6 things and nature will go, I'm sorry, punch card expired. And overall, that's a beneficial thing, because people will move in and out of cycles where we may be hitting on 3 of the 6 years and we're doing pretty good, feeling pretty good. And then something comes out of left field and flips us. But if you really want to prolong your lifespan, you have to contribute. You have to be vital. You have to be pushing yourself. Because I can look at it biologically. Most people don't have access to the equipment and the tools and the scopes and the things to actually see what the degradation factors are. But I can look at it and you can see that over time, if people get stressed out, their cortisol levels spike. That starts a cascade. They start holding fat. That starts a cascade. Visceral adipose tissue goes up. Biological function goes down. Lipidemia can set in. Like in this, it's a snowball cascade of doom. You're like, ah, but if you save those things off and you work on all these different little components, then it's manageable. And you may not. I've got a friend who's always saying that he wants to live to be 180, and he's trying and he's doing everything he can possibly do to do that, and he's making some good strides. But I don't actually know that with the tech the way it is presently, that's really viable. It might be close. Definitively, you could get very close. Personally, I think with the things that we've done in my research group, you could easily do that. It's a very concerted effort, right? Are you contributing socially? Are you contributing familially, relationally, intellectually? Like, you've got to really keep pushing it. And look at a kid, look at the way they wake up and embrace the world versus somebody who's older. Like, kids are like, whoa, every day is like Christmas morning. You jump out of bed and you want to go out and pass and do stuff. And when people get older, they're like, and all of that stuff, it sounds silly, but it actually does. There's a biological correlate to that. When you wake up in the morning, if you are excited to wake up, it sends an entirely different endocrine cascade than if you wake up in the morning and you're bummed out and looking at the day and kind of thinking, God, I don't want to do this again. Your body responds. We would think that from the outside, logically, there's no difference, but it's like tears, right? Tears from happiness and tears from sadness or tears from pain. If you run a spectral analysis on them, they're entirely different. And it's because they're different secretions that correlate with that. And the exact same thing occurs in our lives. We wake up and embrace the day, whole different approach to the day.
That it's so key. That's so important. And that's exactly my philosophy, I think. And most people that know me, you don't know me that well yet, but I wake up like that every day. And I try to live every moment from a place of happiness. And if I find myself not like every moment is like that, but I get myself out of it quickly, right? Oh, I don't want to be in that place, like you said, of that endocrine cascade, or my cortisol levels are off the charts. Like, I notice that within myself because it's about body awareness. And I think that's the place where longevity is key. Knowing how your body is functioning. And most people have just tuned out of that. They're like, oh, my body just does what it does. I'll just let it keep on going. I'm like, oh no, you got to be aware of what you're doing to have the changes if you want to have a good life, a healthy body, a healthy family, healthy relationship, and a community around you that's healthy.
Meditation is the first thing when people ask, what can they do? It's never a supplement. No supplement is the first thing. You have to change the inner environment first.
Exactly.
And so that always, just to tell people, meditate. The second thing, modulate what you're putting in your body. Rather than taking more stuff, put the fork down, chill out, don't eat until after lunch. Just seriously, that kind of stuff makes a big difference.
Yeah, meditate with the fork. May the fork be with you.
There is no fork, right?
Right, yes. Yeah.
Proper meditation.
Yeah, I think We're definitely going to see some changes on the front. And I love all of the things that you're doing to help people to realize that change that they can have in their biology and their environment around them. I know you're doing so many amazing more things, but we could talk for hours, but I know we have to be cognizant of both of our times. But I do want to wrap up some cool things. If you can tell us a little bit about the Wizard Science line that you have, because I think that's fascinating. I know you talked a little bit about the carbon 60, which is part of it, correct? And if you can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll just touch on a few more things and we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So Wizard Science's products are, for the most part, carbon 60 based. So they're lipolysed carbon 60. And I let the body, in its infinite wisdom, do the breaking down and the translocating, right? So you take in the compounds. If you want to get something to the brain, there's one formulation called Neural RX that I made for people with Alzheimer's. And if you don't have a big cognitive deficit, then it's a phenomenal nutrient. But it has all of these different components, but it's based in caprylic acid. And the reason for that is caprylic acid is a medium chain triglyceride, C8. And when you ingest it, it goes to your liver, fractionates in your liver, becomes ketone bodies, and then whoop, your body pushes it up to your brain. And so you get beta hydroxybutyrate with a seducted nanosphere moving to your brain. And then it drops neural inflammation and it upregulates potentiation, then it stimulates the lymphatic system, and then it breaks down. It's got proteolytic enzymes that break down tau proteins and beta amyloid plaquing, and then it stimulates the lymphatics. So every night when you're snoozing, you get interstitial fluid and cerebrospinal fluid to wash your brain and cleanse it. And the net effect is over time, you reduce the inflammation and take out the different deposits that would have impacted neuronal function. And so it upregulates those in accord with providing a boost of energy just from the upregulation of ATP neuronally. So that's one thing. That's the Neural RX. Then there's another, which is just the base for that, which is just the C8. Kind of, it goes too, but it doesn't have all the fancy components to remove things and to upregulate the energetics. It drops inflammation. So if somebody has some really bad neural inflammation, I always tell them, don't do the Neural RX, just go with the C8, because the first thing you want to do is put out the fire before you start doing a lot of other stuff to it. Then one of the other serums is based in C60 coupled with extra virgin olive oil, because it provides for a really easy membrane swap with most of your somatic cells, which are just the normal cells in your body. And that goes to most places. And then there's some other specialty oils that I'll bind to do specific things. There's one for hair loss, which is another type of liquid, which is non-comedogenic. It's not oily and greasy, that you just put into your scalp that promotes hair growth. And then there's other things for viral loading. And then there's other things for cancer. And there's things dermally for topical stuff that the serums are coupled with peptides like GHKCU, cupric peptides, and then stem cells and exosomes, stabilized exosomes. There's a whole host of stuff. Basically, it was anything that I could do to hit the penultimate, like the best thing that I could figure out. That's where I house that in terms of different biologically mediating and modulating sorts of things. I wanted to be able to say, okay, here's a problem. How best do I crack it? And so that's what Wizard Science is. It's really pushing the bound, applied biochem and what I can do with it.
Yeah, those sound fascinating.
It's so fun. Honestly, it's so fun because I really do. I look at somebody will come up with a problem, and I really like solving puzzles. So we did one a while back, which was sarcoptic mange for dogs, and came up with a topical formula that just wiped out sarcoptic mange. Which doesn't sound like a big deal unless you have a dog that has sarcoptic mange, and then you know that it's actually it's a really bad scene. But that's the kind of stuff we're always delving in and figuring out new things. And I think at this point, I'm not sure how many products are actually on the site. The guys that I work with, I will do a lot of the biochem and come up with the things, and we'll test it and vet it out. And then slowly over time, we'll start releasing things. So I think there are 5 or 6 products that are actually for sale. The other thing, and I always say this, is if people have an issue, just reach out to me. I'm here to help. And which sounds like a platitude, but it's actually not. It's quite literal. So if there's something that my particular skill set allows me to do to contribute, I'll do it.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think you can really feel that with your energy too. It's really sincere. It's not just like, oh yeah, just reach out to me. I
actually get back to every single person who reaches out. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming because there are a lot of people, and it takes a little bit. So if you do reach out, don't get upset if it takes me a couple of weeks to get back to you.
Be patient. Be patient. He's changing the world out there. Be patient.
Well, it's funny to me sometimes because there are a lot of times when people will reach out with a specific condition and I will figure out how to crack the condition, but then they don't follow back. I'll send them a
You're like,
message
wait,
and
what
say,
happened?
here you go, here's the solution. And crickets, which is an interesting thing, but I guess that's okay.
People get distracted. And what about
Well,
and that's wizardsciences.com. And what about the other supplement company, the Biocharged? Can you tell us a little bit?
Biocharged.com. Yeah, so Biocharged, we've got two products. So we have one that is an ozonated oil called Resistor, and that's what we were speaking about initially. And then the other is called Amptogen. It's a Shilajit product, so it has NMN and Shilajit and niacin, and it's basically just a super energy formula.
Awesome.
And again, scratching my own itch here. I want to motor through the day at a really high output level. So I spent a lot of time developing stuff that actually allows me to do that.
Yeah.
And the thing with the Biocharge products is they have a very specific kind of quantum charging process that they go through. So that's impactful. That actually makes a difference. And you can see the difference in the lab work between what is quantum charged and what is not quantum charged. And so many people throw that term around. It always drives me nuts because it's like quantum charged pillow cushions. Like they use it as a marketing tool. And I really don't think most people know exactly what it means, but not to say that I'm the person that is really the arbiter of what that really is, because I'm certainly not, but I use it in a very definable fashion that's backed up with data. And I think over time, with all the different companies that are doing quantum this and quantum that, and looking at multidimensionality and things like that, there will become a vernacular that is standardized over time. We're saying when we first started, we're at the very cusp of starting to figure a lot of this stuff out. So it's going to be a little.
Yeah, we're on the cusp, the cutting edge. We're going to get there. Yeah. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just time. It'll just take a little while.
It's just time. Exactly. You're right. And you're so generous with the offer of getting 15% discount to all the listeners, and they can use the code GENIUS on both of those sites for the amazing products and test them out. Like, who doesn't want more energy? I think I love the one that you have for a brain cognition and helping with Alzheimer's and dementia. I mean, that is key. We have a lot of people that need that particular aspect of health.
That is key. Yeah, and I really hope if you have somebody that you care about that is in one of those particular conditions, you give it a whirl, because it's markedly different. And there's so many people who have reaped the benefits of that. That's a particularly insidious and bad condition. Oddly, though, I'm reluctant to say the word disease, because the reason I was able to crack the egg on that is because I took a while and kind of figured out my own kind of sort of theory of pathogenesis, how that arrived at being. And Alzheimer's isn't actually, in my opinion, a disease. It's a protective mechanism that's gone unchecked. Because anytime you have environmental or chemical insult, your brain does the same thing that it does with the omentum, which is that lacy midband around your midsection. It sequesters things that would biologically impact you in a detrimental way in your omentum. Your brain, of course, does the same thing. So it sequesters things in tau proteins and amyloid beta plaques and things like that, and just packs them up and puts them away. And over time, literally over decades, you start to realize that, oh, I'm not thinking as clearly. Oh, and it's just literally because things can't get through there. And so if you reverse that trend and break it down into small components, like I wasn't able to do a single point solution for that. It actually took working on 5 different components and creating those together into a serum that contained something that would approach and address each of those 5 different components. It was your biology doesn't just function on one dimension. It's chemical, biochemical,
emotional, spiritual.
Yeah. So you've got to address it like that. And so that's at the culmination of that. That's why I say I don't really want to call it a disease, because it's not. It's a protective mechanism that's just gone too far. It's like an autoimmune condition. At a certain point, it's something that functioned, but then it's gone amiss and it's functioning improperly. And that's what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, that's so true. When I was in medical school, we worked in the lab looking at all the cadavers. And I will never forget, like, I think we had 2 cadavers that had Alzheimer's, and seeing that brain and seeing what it looked like. And I was like, wow, it's like a deterioration. It's very interesting. And I can understand that concept, and it makes total sense about it not being a disease. It's like shrinking. It's like, I got to protect itself. I got to protect. And I think that when they have things crossing that blood-brain barrier, we're going to have that protection piece, especially when it's heavy metals and things that aren't supposed to be there. The brain has to decide, okay, what am I going to sacrifice? to survive
Yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly. Survival. Your body always prioritizes survival. It doesn't necessarily prioritize surviving in a good, positive fashion. It
Right.
just prioritizes survival. So
Yeah.
if you're some doddering fool and you can meander around and barely do things, you're still breathing. It's hitting its prime directive. But beyond a certain threshold, culturally, you become a deficit. So
Yeah.
that's trying to address that is, I think, the sweet spot where you try and reintegrate those people back into the culture by virtue of fixing the thing that ails them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that product. And I think that's a great one for those people listening out there that try that out on your family or friends. If hopefully you don't have a lot of people with dementia in your family, but I know that some
Yeah,
people do. Yeah.
so just again, it's a great nootropic. If you don't have a deficit, just
Right. You
take
don't
it
have to
because
have it. Yes, exactly. I wasn't meaning just for that, but yes, totally. Yeah. Okay, great. As we're wrapping up things today, I have one last fun question for you. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do to make the biggest impact on the planet right now?
I would be working on two of the projects that I'm already working on. One is for biochar production because I think the damage that's happened to the soil, we're still in a spot where we can get in there and mitigate the detriment that we've already created and maybe recover in a positive fashion. And the other is the desalination project I'm doing. And because I'd really like to be able to provide with a couple billion people that don't have access to clean water. So if I can fix the soil and the water, woohoo, then
Right. Yes, that'd be great.
my budget is definitively limited. But it's the beauty is those are problems that are still solvable, even with a limited budget. All it takes is a little bit of focus and sacrifice and time.
Yeah,
And
that's so true.
so
Those
yeah,
are
I
great.
think I would here. Yeah.
Yeah, and biochar is a fascinating. I love it. We use it at the farm that I work at, and we make our own, or we'll purchase it. But yeah, I'm so amazed. I use it in the medicinal garden. How much the plants are like, yes, this is the best thing you've ever given us. I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the garden is huge. The plants are. I'm like, wow, you really have taken on your own life form. And so
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see how it works.
Yeah, I worked on a project where I developed a carbon negative concrete about 2 years ago. And the idea was carbon coming from concrete, CO2 concrete is, if it were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas in the world.
Oh my God.
So
if concrete was a country, is that what you said?
Yeah, if concrete were a country, it would be the third largest emitter. China, then the US, then the Republic of Concrete. Yeah, so it actually accounts for 8% of the world's greenhouse gases is coming from concrete.
Awful.
When you take calcium carbonate and you're turning it into calcium oxide to make clinker is the term. There's this very energy intensive process and it releases a tremendous amount of greenhouse gases. So I came up with a way to actually negate that 8% and then take out another 24%. So it would knock that back pretty heavily. Not that everybody would shift to it, but if they did ubiquitously shift to it, it would instantly cause a drop of about 32%. So about a third of the world's greenhouse gases would go away overnight, which would be amazing. But
yeah.
I don't expect that everybody would do it. But the problem became one of the components was biochar, and there wasn't enough of it, right? There's 70,000 metric tons in the US annually, which would be a fraction of what I would need to actually do it. So then my next issue was, okay, I've got to address the bottleneck in the supply chain. So I've been working on that for the past year. So outside of my lab, I have this ginormous contraption that we call the Carbon Dragon that makes biochar at an insanely fast rate, probably faster than I think anything else out there right now.
Well, that's so cool. I got to see that. You got to send me a picture of that. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Or post it on Instagram so we can all tag it.
Yeah, I think I'll wait until it's done and painted because right now it looks like the difference between the Iron Man suit when it's finished and the Iron Giant. Right now, it's far more Iron Giant and less Iron Man. So yeah.
Okay, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it is a work in progress, but that's the cool thing is, right, that's just having done that for the soil, that'll make a huge difference because NPK, it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, like all the things that are necessary for growth. When you make a mesoporous biochar like that, you can really get the stuff to stick in there. And so much of it's just wasted with food waste. You can take agricultural waste, bind that to the char, and end up with this tremendously good fertilizer. And then using it in the garden that you tend, where you're working on it, huge growth. And we did too. That's one of the things. Like you look at the areas where you use biochar, and then you look at the normal areas. You're kind of like, Wow, that's shocking.
Yes, you're
It's
like,
like
that really
journey
works.
to the garden.
Yeah, totally. Tell us how you're going to be at the 8th annual Biohacking Conference in Beverly Hills. Tell us about that a little bit, real quick, and where people can find it, sign up, and then how people can find you.
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. You can just find me at Wizard Sciences or on Instagram at Ian Mitchell1. And then the 8th annual Biohacking Conference, it's Dave Asprey's conference with Bulletproof. Used to be the Bulletproof Conference, then it was the Upgraded Lab Conference. Now it's the 8th annual Biohacking Conference hosted by Dave Asprey. So the moniker has shifted 3 times if I'm tracking it. And so this year I'll probably be speaking both for Lila Quantum and then about Biocharged and talking ozone. So, and probably a lot of other things as well. And then, yeah, because I've done a lot of work with Bulletproof and with Dave specifically. We just developed a new coffee called Danger Coffee for him. And that was pretty good stuff. It remineralizes people when they ingest it, so it's nifty. But yeah, it's biohacking is my stomping grounds. I think it's where people are not scared of taking the reins and being a little bit fringy and seeing what they can do to the bounds of their own biology. Yeah, it's a great conference. It's for a super bio nerd. It's like a playground. When you go, you're like, oh, there are people that have beds with crystals and vibrating fields and all sorts of stuff. And it's some of it I'm sure is probably a little gimmicky, but some of it very just cutting edge, super high tech, like the Vasper gear, which is compression therapy, cryotherapy, like all sorts of stuff coupled together. That's really good. And the guys over at NASA use that. And it is like a biotech playground. So yeah, I would recommend, yeah, anybody check that out. It's cool. And then again, if anybody needs help or something like that, just hit me up. I'm around.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I learned so much and I can't wait to share it with the world. It was such a great conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Lulu. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I will be talking to you again.
Yes, I think so.